Welcome to this deep dive. Step with us now into kind of a quiet space, a moment of reflection. We're tracing not just the history of a technology we all hold in our hands, but that, quiet longing, the human story woven into its very fabric.
Exactly. Today, we're looking at an essay by Oliver Werner Neidinger, also known as him. It's called From Car Phones to Pocket Souls, A Design History of the Mobile Phone. And it's really less a technical manual, more like a meditation across the decades, exploring how these devices went from these, weighty blocks to potentially invisible companions.
Right. And our mission here is to go beyond just the specs, the technical timeline. We want to understand the why. Why did the design shift like that? What did those changes mean for us, for how we connect, how we live our lives? We're sort of looking for the soul within the technology, like the essay suggests, tracing that human arc from just utility to, deeply embedded life.
Mm-hmm. And this whole journey, it starts in a place that feels almost alien compared to the sleek glass things we carry today. The essay opens with this really powerful image. The first mobile phone wasn't handheld at all. It was a box.
A box.
Yeah, heavy, clunky, super expensive. The essay calls it a car-bound creature, literally wired into dashboards, needing the car's engine for power using these old analog networks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the kind where signals just feed it out easily, connections weren't always clear. It's a world away.
Yeah, the source paints this picture of the post-war world, the 1940s, 50s. Mobile communication wasn't for the average person then, not at all. It was mostly military-grade stuff, often hidden away in official vehicles or maybe just whispered about in labs as some distant possibility.
You'd see it maybe imagines in science fiction, but in reality. Super exclusive, almost secretive in how it was used.
The future of connection was still, as the essay puts it, kind of wearing a uniform. Definitely not a consumer item yet, not by a long shot.
But what's crucial here, and the source really emphasizes this, is that even then, even in that early stage, stuck in cars and used by governments, the idea was already taking root. The essay mentions that even back then, in those labs, in the minds of engineers, maybe some dreamers, this one fundamental question was echoing: what if we could talk from anywhere?
That core longing.
Exactly. That deep human longing, that desire to bridge distance, to connect spontaneously without being physically tied down somewhere. That's really the invisible engine driving this whole story, this whole history of design and tech evolution. It was just this quiet hum in the background,
Yeah.
long before the technology could actually make it happen.
Okay, let's unpack that longing as we look at these foundational decades, say the 1940s through the 1980s. So the 40s and 50s laid the groundwork, the basic concept of mobile communication, but like we said, super specialized, very exclusive. It really wasn't about the individual user. It was about institutional needs, military needs, needing huge infrastructure, big, clunky equipment.
Right. The dream of talking from anywhere existed, sure, but it was still just that, a dream, very distant from everyday life.
And if you connect that to the design of the era, even though it was primitive, it perfectly reflected that purpose, didn't it?
Absolutely. These weren't devices designed for personal comfort or, portability. They were built for function in specific demanding situations. They were robust, integrated into bigger systems. They prioritized things like range and reliability way over user experience. The tech was just physically and socially distant for most people.
Communication as a utility for specific tasks, not personal expression.
Not at all. Not yet.
Okay, so let's fast forward a couple decades. We had this really pivotal moment in the 1970s. The source calls this the birth of the mobile dream, and specifically the handheld dream. This is where it gets really interesting, where the design story starts for the individual.
Yeah, this is 1973, that legendary moment.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Cooper at Motorola makes the first public call on a New York sidewalk using a handheld prototype.
Wow. On the sidewalk.
Right. The source highlights the Motorola Dynatac prototype from '73 as the key device that made this possibility real. It wasn't just mobile anymore. It was personal mobile, even if it was, really raw.
And the design notes from the source for that prototype, they're incredibly revealing about the priorities back then. It was, as the essay describes it, a 25-centimeter tall brick.
25 centimeters.
Can you imagine holding that up to your ear today for any length of time?
No way.
It had a numeric keypad just for dialing, simple LED indicator lights, but crucially, and this is key, no visual display at all.
Nothing. Just pure voice transmission and reception.
It was, by any modern standard, incredibly primitive looking.
Oh, totally. The source notes it looked less like a phone and more like a military radio, which, given its origins, makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
Design aesthetics, user-friendliness, comfort captains, all those just weren't the main concerns. The single goal was the function, that groundbreaking, revolutionary act of cutting the physical cord, enabling communication while you were literally walking down the street, away from any car or building connection.
The source says the phone was a brick. Yes, a physical burden, really. But it held the dream of freedom inside.
That's such a striking contrast. What must that have felt like? That first call? Just the sheer possibility of it? The audacity of talking into this big thing while walking in public? It must have been incredible.
Absolutely. It wasn't about the features. It was about the liberation of location.
Which raises a really interesting point about the psychology of it all, doesn't it? How significant was just the act of talking while walking?
It's huge. Before this, mobile communication was almost always tied to a vehicle, a car, maybe a train, a boat. So breaking that tie, even with this massive device, it represented this profound, almost symbolic shift in potential human liberty and mobility. It wasn't about fancy features. It was the fundamental freedom to speak from wherever you happen to be standing.
And the design reflects that single focus. Raw function, maximum range, hence the size and the big antenna, and just the absolute minimum interface needed to make a call.
Yeah, a tool built for one single revolutionary purpose. Okay, so moving into the 1980s, we see this prototype evolve into an actual commercial product. And the source terms this era the age of the brick power over portability. This is where those early mobile phones stopped being just experimental tech and became, well, true status symbols.
Absolutely. The Motorola Dynatac 8000X, that's the iconic one, it got FCC approval, launched commercially in 1983, and the source details its rather astonishing design specs. It weighed over 1 kilogram.
Over a kilo. It's like carrying a bag of sugar around.
Exactly. Or 2 pounds of butter. And it only offered about 30 minutes of talk time on a charge.
Wow.
Needed constant recharging. And it still had that really prominent antenna sticking out, almost like a car aerial you were holding up to your head.
That's not just the device. It's practically a statement piece. The source says they were carried like trophies. The design philosophy seems pretty clear. Bigger, heavier, more visible, often meant more expensive, more exclusive, more elite.
Definitely.
Talking on one in public was rare, and it was an undeniable display of status and, well, access.
Precisely. This wasn't a device designed to slip easily into your everyday life or for convenience. In fact, life basically had to bend around it. You had to plan when and where you'd make calls because of the battery life and the weight.
Right.
You'd find a place to be seen with it if you wanted to project that image. And you certainly didn't hold it up for long conversations.
Yeah, bet not.
The source captures the design's message perfectly. Design screamed, "Look at me, I'm connected." It was all about projecting power and being right at the forefront of technology.
But that signal, "I'm connected," it came with serious, literal bulk. What was the deeper human desire being expressed there, do you think? Was it just status, or was it something more fundamental, linked back to that original longing for connection?
That's what's fascinating here. And the essay kind of subtly touches on the huge trade-off involved. That core longing for connection, for being reachable anywhere, which the essay argues is the fundamental driver it came with, these significant physical and social constraints. The design of the Dynatac 8000X wasn't optimized for easy communication or privacy. It was optimized for making the fact of your connection visible, impressive, aspirational.
Right, broadcasting success.
Exactly. Broadcasting your success, your importance, as much as actually communicating information. It signaled access, influence, being on the cutting edge, even if that edge was heavy, expensive, and frankly, pretty cumbersome.
So the desire for connection initially manifested through a design that really prioritized prominence and power over pure practicality.
That sums it up well, yeah.
Okay, so we've gone from car-bound and secret to these literal bricks carried like symbols of status. As we hit the 1990s, the story shifts again, quite dramatically. The source calls this shrinking the distance phones get personal.
And this fundamental shift, it's directly enabled by a key technology change, network digitization. Analog networks started giving way to digital signals and infrastructure. And that allowed the internal components of the phones to shrink dramatically. Batteries got more efficient, signals became more robust, more secure. This technological leap was really the catalyst for a revolution in design.
And the design trends that came out of this, they're instantly recognizable to many of us, I think. The source talked about the rise of new form factors, the classic candy bar shape, the flip phone, even the slider eventually.
Yeah.
Monochrome LCD displays became standard, giving you more info than just little indicator lights. And crucially, those telltale external antennas started vanishing, getting cleverly tucked inside the phone's body.
Right. Companies like Nokia, Ericsson, Motorola, they weren't just making tech anymore. They were defining the whole look and feel of personal communication. The source specifically mentions icons like the Nokia 1011, the Motorola StarTAC.
StarTAC, that was huge.
It was. Nokia, the essay suggests, made communication feel friendly. Ericsson made it slick. And Motorola, well, they pioneered that compact personal fold with the StarTAC.
And this is the era where phones actually started fitting into pockets.
Yeah.
Right? Not just briefcases or being bolted into cars.
Exactly. The technology finally started catching up to that dream of truly personal mobility. The devices got lighter, more affordable, and suddenly accessible to a much wider audience than just the elite few from the 80s.
And think about the cultural impact the source mentions. Ringtones echoing in schoolyards.
Oh, yeah.
The addictive simplicity of Snake eating up hours of idle time.
Guilty.
Me too.
Oh.
And the introduction of SMS text messaging. That was revolutionary.
It really was. Snake. I definitely remember spending hours playing Snake, trying to beat my own high score. And custom ringtones. That felt so personal.
This era really feels like phones stopped being just a tool for talking and started becoming part of who you were, how you expressed yourself, how you connected with friends in totally new ways.
That's it, exactly. The source captures this perfectly. Design became about use and expression, not just wow. It wasn't just about having the ability to talk from anywhere. It was about making that ability easy, portable, and deeply integrated into daily life, especially for younger people. And critically, the source notes that fundamental shift in interaction. We weren't just talking, we were texting.
Right. Texting completely changed the game.
It added this whole layer of asynchronous, often more personal, casual, sometimes playful interaction that was totally different from a formal phone call.
Yeah, it opened up new ways to flirt, gossip, just check in quickly.
Definitely.
It feels like this is where that personal connection really solidifies, where the phone starts to feel like yours. Do you remember your first phone? What was it like? What did it mean to you back then?
Oh, I do. It was a Nokia, I think a 3210 maybe. Indestructible. And yeah, it felt like freedom, my own connection to my friends, separate from the family landline.
Exactly. For so many of us, that first device from the 90s or early 2000s is tied up with memories of growing independence, sending those first awkward texts, connecting in ways that just weren't possible before.
And the design of those phones, their shape, the customizable ringtones, those swappable faceplates later on, that was crucial to them feeling like personal objects, almost like extensions of our identity.
That personal connection is absolutely key to understanding this era's design evolution, isn't it?
Totally. The design wasn't just shrinking the tech, it was packaging it in ways that felt approachable, customizable, and reflected this new relationship we were forming with the device. It was a tool for social connection and self-expression.
Swappable faceplates. That became huge, letting you literally change the look of your phone to match your mood or style, making the phone a fashion accessory.
It really did. Which brings us perfectly into the 2000s, an era the source calls style and substance, the multimedia era. This is when the mobile phone, as the source puts it so vividly, entered global culture like a comet. It wasn't just a tool anymore, it was a full-blown cultural phenomenon. A multimedia hub, a statement piece you carried and showed off.
It absolutely exploded. It wasn't just a communication device, it was becoming this pocket-sized entertainment and lifestyle center. The source highlights key devices that define this era, like that famously indestructible Nokia 3310.
A legend.
Early multimedia pioneers like the Sony Ericsson T68, maybe, and of course the truly iconic Motorola Razr V3.
The Razr. Everyone, it seemed, wanted a Razr V3 when it came out. That design was just revolutionary, then incredibly thin, metallic, that satisfying flip action, the cool little external screen.
The design innovations mentioned in the source for this era are huge. We got vibrant color displays.
Certainly.
Swappable faceplates became pretty standard, allowing for deep customization. Built-in cameras started appearing, even if they were low-res at first.
Right, VGA cameras, maybe?
And phones adopted these increasingly slim, curved, really stylized bodies. The Razr V3, with its almost impossibly thin profile and metallic finish, it's the perfect example of this shift towards design being a primary selling point.
Design started breathing, as the source puts it, in this decade. Phones became thinner, flashier, more human in their form and how you interacted with them. They were held out like fashion pieces, flipped open with a certain flair.
Yeah.
You weren't just making calls or sending texts anymore. You were playing music on early MP3 players, taking grainy photos and sending them via MMS, browsing really basic mobile web pages,
WP browsers, yeah.
and using them as the central part of your social life and how you presented yourself.
It fundamentally changed how we interacted with the world and with each other.
Yeah.
Your phone wasn't just a phone. It was your camera, your music player, your portable photo album, your way to capture and share moments instantly.
Absolutely. This integration of multimedia, packaged in increasingly stylish designs, made the phone just indispensable to social life and personal expression.
The design wasn't just following the tech. It was facilitating and amplifying this cultural integration. It wasn't just about making it smaller or adding features. It was about making it desirable, a natural, stylish, exciting extension of your life.
Yeah, like a canvas for your identity, carried proudly. And the source drops this crucial hint about what was coming next, something that would change everything all over again. But something even bigger was on the horizon, and it was all-screen.
The all-screen era.
Right.
Late 2000s bleeding into the 2010s. The source nails it, calling this touchscreen world from hardware to experience. This is where, as the source puts it, and it's no exaggeration, the smartphone changed everything.
It truly marks a fundamental revolution, not just in tech, but in design and how humans interact with computers, basically. The source details that key defining design shift, the radical elimination of most, and eventually all, physical keyboards.
Yeah, gone.
The focus shifted entirely to these sleek, flat glass surfaces. That Physio Home button, initially quite prominent, started to fade and eventually just disappeared on many devices.
Right.
And the layout of app icons on the screen, that became the new design language, the main way we navigated and interacted with everything the device could do.
You think about iconic devices like the iPhone 4, early Samsung Galaxy S models like the S3, later the Google Pixel.
Yeah.
They all represent this huge shift. The physical, tactile interface that had defined phones for decades just vanished, replaced by that smooth, reactive glass surface.
And the human impact of this was, well, profound. Multifaceted. The source describes the phone in this era becoming like a mirror, not just a communication tool, but a reflection of your entire digital life.
Right.
Your calendar, your email, your camera roll full of personal memories, your social connections, your whole digital identity. Your life, in a really significant way, started happening behind glass.
That's such a powerful phrase, life behind glass. It really resonates. The source notes that in this transition, design, in a way, disappeared into the interface. The physical form of the phone became minimalist, smooth edges, thin profiles, premium materials like glass and metal. Tactile feedback, like vibration, replaced the click of physical buttons.
Exactly. The device itself became less about its physical buttons and more about the seamlessness of its screen.
On the outside, it was all minimalism, sleekness, premium finishes. The physical device itself was designed to be as unobtrusive as possible, right? Just a beautiful, often featureless slab, except for the screen and maybe a couple of essential buttons.
But, as the source points out, this outward simplicity was deceptive. Behind it surged a torrent of digital life. All the complexity moved inward into the software, the huge ecosystem of apps, the endless stream of information and activity happening inside that glowing glass rectangle.
How did that fundamental shift to touch change the feeling of using a phone? It became much more intuitive, maybe, in some ways. You were directly touching what you wanted to interact with.
Yeah, it felt more direct.
But maybe also more immersive.
Yeah.
More consuming. You weren't pushing a button to access something. You were literally touching and manipulating your digital world right there on the screen.
It absolutely changed the nature of the interaction. Instead of a physical button press, you had gestures, swipes, taps, pinches. It felt more direct, more fluid, definitely more intimate, placing your fingertips right onto your digital content.
Right.
And yes, it absolutely opened up huge possibilities for interface design, and you could argue addiction that just weren't possible with physical keys.
Yeah.
It blurred the lines between the tool and the content. The screen wasn't just an interface to something. It was the window into everything: information, connection, entertainment, productivity. It fundamentally changed our relationship with information and our own digital selves by putting everything within immediate reach, accessible with just a tap or a swipe, often leading to, well, more time spent looking at the screen.
Which brings us pretty much to the current era, the 2020s.
Yep.
The source titles this: The Companion Era, Intelligence Meets Intimacy.
Ah.
And here, the mobile phone had evolved beyond just reacting to what we tell it to do.
Precisely. In this current stage, phones are really starting to anticipate our needs. They're leveraging increasing computational power, artificial intelligence. The source gives examples we see every day. Unlocking your phone, just by looking at it, using sophisticated biometric sensors like face recognition, tracking your sleep patterns or activity levels automatically, AI-driven user experiences like predictive text that suggests words as you type, or those curated content feeds that seem to know what you want before you even do.
It's not just about what we tell the phone anymore. It's increasingly about what the phone knows or predicts about us, about our habits. And design is still evolving, sometimes in unexpected ways. The source mentions innovations that push boundaries or maybe revisit old concepts, like foldable screens which bring back a sense of physical interaction, can feel kind of playful or novel.
Yeah, the foldables are interesting.
Under display cameras that hide the tech even further, and even transparent backs on some phones, like the Nothing phone, that offer a glimpse inside, making the technology visible again as a design statement.
These design choices in the 2020s, they show minimalism kind of softening into futurism or maybe even a playful re-engagement with form. While screens are still central, there's definitely experimentation with physical form, like the foldables, or with transparency.
Right.
Design now, as the source suggests, whispers, not shouts. The message embedded in the design feels like, I'm here when you need me and invisible when you don't. The device is designed for seamless integration, anticipating your needs, being present through notifications or suggestions, but ideally just fading into the background of your consciousness when you're not actively using it.
That idea of being here when you need me and invisible when you don't, it seems like the ultimate goal of design in this era. Striving for frictionless interaction, anticipation, but this increasing intelligence and intimacy, this desire for the device to be this ever-present anticipating companion, it leads the source to raise a really critical, sharp question. But in all this intelligence, one question sharpens. Are we still in control?
That is a profound question, isn't it? And it feels particularly urgent right now with these deeply integrated, intelligent devices. What happens when connection is literally everywhere? When the device in your pocket, which started as a simple brick, now knows so much about you, your location, your habits, your interests, your sleep schedule, and anticipates your needs before you even articulate them.
It fundamentally challenges our sense of agency. If the device is constantly anticipating, suggesting things, guiding our actions, curating our information feeds, subtly influencing our choices based on these complex algorithms, does that dilute our own conscious decision-making?
It's a real concern.
The design goal of becoming invisible or seamlessly integrated, it really raises the stakes on this question of control. The more the device disappears into the fabric of our lives, the more critical it is for us to understand its influence and make sure we remain in the driver's seat, consciously choosing how and when we interact.
And the design of features like infinite scroll or persuasive notifications, which are enabled by this intelligence, they play directly into this question. Is the design serving our goals, or is it maybe manipulating our attention?
It's a tension, isn't it, between the undeniable convenience and utility of having this intelligent companion device and the potential for it to subtly steer our behavior or maybe diminish our own internal compass.
Exactly, a real balancing act.
Okay, so we've tracked this incredible journey from the car-bound brick, a symbol of status, to the personal, customizable device in your pocket. Then the stylish multimedia hub, the revolutionary all-screen interface, and now this intelligent, anticipating companion. The source then looks ahead, speculating about the 2030s and beyond, and it poses this really fascinating possibility, a world without phones.
Yeah, and this isn't like a pessimistic prediction that communication will disappear. It's the opposite, really. The speculation here, drawn from the essay, is that the future might be phoneless. Not because we lack connection, but precisely because connection becomes so ubiquitous, so completely embedded, that a single distinct physical object like a phone just isn't necessary anymore.
Embedded, how do you mean? Like dissolving into the environment or maybe even into ourselves?
Potentially. The speculative designs the source mentions are truly futuristic. AR glasses that overlay digital info onto the real world.
Right, augmented reality.
Neural links that could potentially connect technology directly to our brains. That's way out there, but it's discussed.
Yeah.
Screenless interfaces that respond to voice or gesture. Or systems where information is just projected onto surfaces around us. The source suggests that in this highly speculative future, design's ultimate goal might actually be to vanish. To serve our needs without requiring a physical object to be held or looked at constantly, to connect us without distracting us, to deliver information without demanding our focused attention on a screen.
The interface in this vision just dissolves into instinct, into intuition. You think it, you gesture it, you look at something, and the connection or the information appears seamlessly without needing that intermediary handheld device.
What would a world without a physical phone in your hand or pocket actually feel like? For most of us today, the phone is almost like an extra limb, isn't it?
It really is.
Is this potential future a kind of liberation? Freeing ourselves from the constant pull of the screen, the weight in our pocket, the need to constantly look down?
Or is it something else? An even deeper, more inescapable level of integration, where disconnection becomes virtually impossible.
That raises a really important question rooted in human experience. What do we gain and what do we lose when technology becomes that integrated, that invisible? If connection is always available, everywhere, embedded in everything from our glasses to the environment around us, does the concept of consciously choosing to disconnect even exist in the same way?
That's a chilling thought, almost.
The design goal of invisibility is powerful for utility, sure, but it also removes that physical boundary, the act of putting the phone down, turning it off, leaving it in another room that currently lets us consciously choose moments of separation.
As we reach the end of this deep dive, after tracing this journey from the car-bound box to the anticipating companion and speculating about invisibility, the source brings us back to this powerful final reflection. It's titled "The Soul in the Signal." And it reiterates that the story of mobile phones isn't fundamentally about the hardware, the technology, the specs, or even just the design evolution itself.
Exactly. It's about that initial, enduring, deeply human longing. The longing to be seen, to be heard, to stay close to others, to bridge the physical distances that separate us, to connect even across oceans, as the source puts it so beautifully. This fundamental emotional and social need, that's a persistent thread connecting that massive car phone from decades ago to the intelligent device in your pocket right now.
And each design step, from the clunky brick of the 80s, through the personal flip phones and candy bars of the 90s, the stylish multimedia devices of the 2000s, the all-screen revolution of the 2010s, and the anticipating companions of today. Each step wasn't just about engineering progress or, aesthetic trends. As the source profoundly states, it was humanity folding its needs into plastic, metal, and light.
Wow, that's a beautiful line.
Isn't it? Our desire for connection, for expression, for information, for presence, for convenience, these deep human needs shape the physical form and the interactive experience of these objects across all these decades.
And in all this evolution, through all the designs, the features, the shifts in form factor and interface, the central truth, according to the source, stays constant. The real device is us.
Us.
Yeah. The technology is the tool, the design is its language, but the engine, the meaning, the soul, that's the human being using it, the human connection being sought.
We are the ones who ultimately decide when to speak into the signal, when to listen, when to disconnect, when to choose a different form of presence. In a world that feels increasingly saturated with constant signal and these intelligent, anticipating devices, our agency, our ability to consciously choose our relationship with technology and with each other is paramount.
Absolutely. Despite the power and pervasiveness of these devices, our ability to reclaim stillness, to opt for different kinds of connection, that's still within our grasp.
And the source leaves us with this truly provocative, maybe even counterintuitive thought. It suggests that perhaps the most advanced design in this entire story is not technology at all.
Not technology. That feels unexpected, right? Even jarring, after tracing decades of intense technological design and evolution, what could the source possibly mean by that?
What could possibly be a more advanced design than the cutting-edge devices we've just been discussing?
It offers examples that completely shift our perspective. The source suggests the most advanced design might be something like a moment of silence, or a look across the table, or a world without notifications but full of distance.
Wow.
The essay argues that after designing devices for ubiquitous connection, the ultimate, most advanced design might be the intentional cultivation of deep human connection and presence that doesn't rely on technology, or maybe requires actively pushing back against its constant demands.
So it's about designing our lives and interactions to prioritize human presence over digital proximity.
That seems to be the core idea.
That's the provocative thought to leave with you, the listener. After this journey from that heavy, clunky box tied to a car, driven by a raw longing for connection, to devices that know us intimately and might eventually just disappear into our environment or even our bodies. The ultimate reflection isn't on the object itself or even its design evolution. It's on how we use it, how we let it shape us, or how we choose not to use it sometimes, in order to foster real, meaningful human connection and presence in our lives.
It really challenges us to consider what truly constitutes valuable connection, doesn't it? And where its deepest value lies. reminding us that technology is just a tool, and its ultimate impact depends entirely on our conscious choices about how we engage with the world and the people in it.
So we've journeyed from that heavy, clunky box tethered to a car, all the way to the sleek, intelligent device likely in your pocket right now. We've traced the human story woven into its design, and even speculated about a future where connection might become so embedded it dissolves the physical phone itself.
And this history is profoundly human,
Yeah.
driven by our deep-seated need to bridge distance, to share our lives, to be present for one another, whether that's across oceans or just across a table.
Which brings us right back to that device in your hand, your pocket, or perhaps nearby right now.
And leaves us with that quiet challenge, that invitation from the source's final thought. Valuing presence, cultivating silence, and making intentional choices about how we connect in a world that's always buzzing with signal.
And maybe the next time you pick up your phone, you'll feel it, that echo of everything that brought us here, the whole history of human longing folded into its form. And maybe you'll also feel the quiet invitation of silence and the pull of presence in the world right here around you.